At an enterprise level, nothing is more important than communication. Grammarly for Enterprise enables your company to work smarter and faster. Other AI tools can't quantify business impact, but Grammarly gives you actionable insights and measurable results with features like their effective communication score, which tracks key metrics so you can make data-driven decisions to improve outcomes. Visit Grammarly.com/enterprise. That's Grammarly.com/enterprise.
You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today, and just like any other time, we have another amazing guest for y'all. And man, happy Friday. You know what it is, man. It's time to have some fun, party up, and get ready for Monday. So every day is a good day, though, man. We're in the Refocused world. We have a special guest, Matthew Tack. He is going to share with us his amazing story. He has a co-host opportunity that he does with his amazing partner in that show. We're going to learn all about that a little bit later, but I'm going to first tell you about a story about him. But real quick, the show is called Health Decoded Podcast. He does it with Dr. Alfred Alessi, and their website's AlessiFunctionalHealth.com. But Matt, he's been through the ups and downs. He's an entrepreneur, but just like any other entrepreneur, there's a story behind that. There's a grind. There's times of battle, times of going through a lot of twists and turns, but he made it through. He even went through a Celebrate recovery program, a 90-day program, and he came out better than ever. And he had an amazing turning point. So we're going to learn about that amazing part of this journey. First and foremost, Matthew, appreciate you clearing the calendar for today, man. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Looking forward to the conversation, and thanks for having me on the show.
I appreciate your time being here, man. Tell us a little bit about some of the struggles and hardships that you went through in your early 20s, because it was a season of testing, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. No, it was, there was a lot of hills and valleys, and a lot of coping mechanisms that I utilized in that period. But ultimately I had to be directed towards, do I want to continue this direction, or do I want to make a change in my life? And so I've been very intentional about each day, especially being a dad now. But in my 20s, I always considered myself an athlete, right? And I identified that way. And then when I stopped playing competitive athletics and I entered like the workforce, I was shocked. I was like, what do I do now? What do I do with my life? And so it was during that season where I just spiraled into a state of depression. Honestly, not many people knew about it, right? I was, I probably didn't show much of it, but man, was I super unhappy. And I actually ended up getting married that season to my wife now. And but it was, I remember we had just moved to Florida from Washington, D.C., and I was like, I got to figure something out. And so I did a 90-day Celebrate recovery program. I'm intentional about my faith and pretty much as well as human performance, which I'm very passionate about. But my faith is a big component of that. And I just stepped into that. And really, it was in that 90 days where I just had to basically give it up to God and just say, hey, I want to change in my life, and I want to think of things more positive, like the best days are ahead of me, not behind me. And so by doing that, really is when I became super intentional about reading, about just what I was feeding my mind. And that direction just has curtailed into me always aspiring and wanting to learn new things. So I became an entrepreneur at 28 and really haven't looked back since. I've really kind of like pushed that needle forward. But then I also evolved that into my family, right? I'm an entrepreneur in my family and how I lead my wife and my kids. And so it really was a time of like, I utilized a bunch of coping mechanisms. I was drinking, I was smoking, I was just doing various things that led to me where like, what am I going to do now? And so really God got hold of my heart, completely shifted my mentality, the way I view each day. And Atomic Habits was really a catalyst as far as a book of me just wanting to improve a little bit every day.
I'm glad you shared that because there's oftentimes when we are at the crossroads, at that point, it's like a ton of bricks hit you at once. And it's like, okay, do we continue on or do we make that change and make that shift in our mind and our actions? When you started to create these businesses, starting your entrepreneurship journey, what was it like in the beginning, understanding that, okay, I'm on the next chapter now, all the other stuff is behind me, but hey, it's a whole new set of problems now. Business is not something for the light. It's hard. It is for those who are able to endure the pain of business as well. What was your mindset as you began your journey as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, one of the big things as an entrepreneur is kind of setting the objectives and the boundaries of kind of the primary is my family first, and so that was one of the things as far as like how I commit to my wife, how I treat my wife, was one of the big catalysts as far as I want to make sure that being an entrepreneur, somebody said that like it's like getting hit in a butt with a bus every day, over and over and over again. But I wanted to make sure that I protected the peace of my household first. And so your home should be your happy place. And so that was one of the big things in terms of like how I was going to come home and how I was going to measure like a level of success. I put in hard work, but I wanted to make sure that like home was that peaceful state. And so that was a huge thing for me in terms of just protecting really the serenity in my house. And then, beyond that, it definitely is like, it's a bear, right? It still is a bear. I have a couple businesses that we're really trying to grow. And it takes some capital, and how do you find the capital and do just all the things that you need to do for a business. And so that's just like a big component of just every day kind of like coming in to attack it, right? Being really aggressive with it. I have a pretty aggressive personality, so like I like going in. And so that's where, making sure though my mindset is prepared for the day, like that priming mechanism. And so I get up in the morning, read scripture, I make sure I work out every day. And so I do those things that are acts of consistency to kind of aid in that process of like, I can handle bigger things when it comes to business.
Once again, you're listening to Refocused Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest, Matthew Tack. He also co-hosts a show with Dr. Alfred Alessi, Health Decoded podcast. Your personal story ties into what you're doing professionally, not just with your brands, but with this podcast show when it comes to health and lifestyle. Kind of break down for the audience what are some of the things that you and Dr. Alfred Alessi tackle on the show, and what are some of the health tips that they can appreciate?
Yeah, so Health Dakota, we cover a broad range of things, but specifically what we focus is on really like the kind of the misnomers when it comes to like your health and the purposes of longevity and human performance. So we'll tackle the nutritional side of things, like how you should be, as you get older. If you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, it doesn't really matter, but what you're aiding yourself in terms of fuel. And so that was our last podcast. And then other things in terms of like training, like how should you be training for the purposes of longevity to feel better, or even like training for hobbies. I love when people have hobbies. And so those hobbies, how are we incorporating those but into our training side of things? So we're very big on resistance training. And so we just give you all sorts of tips and tricks on how to properly do that, right? And how to aid your body. And then we get into the real like nitty gritty stuff too, the nerdy side of things, where we'll talk about human performance through various protocols that we have, whether they be in peptides or hormone replacement therapy. So we dive into those in terms of how that can aid and promote a level of like youth, even while you're tapping into maybe even your 30s, 40s, and 50s. So we tackle all the stuff, different supplements you can take. So we try to decode everything and just give you the best possible information.
I like that. And when you think about living with intention, I mean, we live in a phase where social media is never going away. I mean, But the key thing about social media is that it is a medium and we have to be social. But when you think about being intentional in how you live, you can't just talk the talk. People can know when you're trying to fluff things around. How do you keep yourself poised and just continuously pressing forward so that way you're not just kind of fluffing around about life, but you're being very intentional and very precise in what you're trying to do with your life?
Yeah, I think that comes back to like maintain a level of curiosity. That's why I love like, book reading or, just asking, but, when you ask questions, you usually get better answers and you just keep asking questions, you'll get better answers. And so maintaining a level of curiosity throughout every day is one of the big things. Find people that might know the answers, right? But this constant state of curiosity, especially in the social world, I like utilizing it for good. So like 99% of the content we put out is for good, to uplift people. So it's how we utilize it, right? And then also having a kind of a barometer and parameters that we put on it of like, a lot of people want to go to it to determine their level of success or put it in a priority. But the reality is, I don't think it's a bad idea to like kind of look where you want to be. So there's a healthy comparison and a negative comparison. And so like, we just need to have that barometer at which like how we're exactly going every day, right? How we're controlling our thoughts and how we're improving. And just like for me, I'm a dad of 3 girls and a wife, right? And I have a wife. So I always try to be that as my base, my precursor for everything else. And so I want to make sure I'm maintaining that because like if somebody said this, but if I'm a celebrity in my house, that's really all that matters, right? And so you can be a celebrity of the world, but if you miss out on your home, man, that kind of sucks. So I just always go in with the maintenance of every day I want to be a celebrity in my house. And then if the world sees it, cool, and then, but don't get me wrong, I struggle with a level of comparison when it comes to social media. Oh, I can be here, I can be here. But presence is such an instrumental tool, right? That the past is the past, the future will come, but right now is really all that you have. So how are we capturing this very moment?
I love that you said that because the moment is all you have now. And too many times we as people, disclaimer, not all of us, but every now and then we all fit in the same lane. We get too carried away worrying about the future or worrying about the past that be holding us back versus doing what we do now. And I always love sharing the quote, paraphrasing from Babe Ruth, that you can't win today's games with yesterday's home runs. You have to keep swinging that bat. You got to keep going at it. You got to keep going because there are going to be times you win and there are going to be times you lose. And I love how you said about being the hero in your own household first, because that is key, man. You only thing you have in this world is the people you love, and if they don't keep you centered and grounded, then it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. You're going to be looking for that validation. So my next question is, man, old school. I remember we used to play basketball until the street lights came on. What's some of the things that you try to do offline? Because a lot of times we're just caught up with, our mobile phones and devices. What's some of the things you try to do to just kind of relax and do things offline?
Yeah, I'm not much of I'm a baller, man. I love basketball. It like scratches my itch, man. I love it. So I play basketball like every Saturday. And then I'll usually play on a Sunday night. We'll play some 3-on-3. So basketball's like kind of my cut loose. I love grinding. And then I do love golf too. I don't get nearly out as much as I would like, but golf is like one of those games I don't love watching it nearly as much as I love playing it, but it's one of those games where you have to be super cerebral. It's only you. It's kind of like you just got to figure shots out and shot patterns, and so those are two things that I just like. I love doing, and then I do enjoy reading. Like that's the curiosity element. But when I train at the gym too, that's something I do in cadence. My wife thinks I love training, but to be honest with you, I love the outcome of training. I don't think I love necessarily the element of training, but I do it with discipline every day. So, those are some of the things that I do on a day-to-day basis or a week-to-week basis that, you could probably find me. I'm cutting loose, but I love balling.
once again listening, watching us online on Refocused Radio. Talking to our guest today, Matthew Tack. He member co-host with his partner, Dr. Alfred and Leslie. Go to their website, lesliefunctionalhealth.com. The name of that podcast is Health Decoded Podcast. One more thing I want to talk about before we head out is let's think about what people, especially our audience, our listening audience, our target is men who are 25 of age on average is who listens to the show the most. What's some of the things that you can emphasize on? Because you touched on discipline. I think that's a great word that you explored throughout the episode. What's some things that they can just really be grounded in and focus on as they continue to grow in their career, or if they're in their own business, entrepreneurship? Because discipline is one thing, but being able to pause, reflect, relax, and catch your breath, that's another thing. What's some things you can share with young men out there so that way they can have that grind, but also understand to know when they need to take a break from themselves?
Yeah, that's so good, because I mean that was where I was at that culmination point, in my mid-20s. And as I look back, I was in corporate America at that point. So I was at a Fortune 50 company. I was doing some project management work for a company called Accenture. And so I wasn't even an entrepreneur yet. But one of the big things was that I did, and, I would encourage, and this is always like that level of curiosity, right, of getting a little bit better. But I remember at that time, like, I just tried to outwork everybody. And so, like, I didn't really have dependents. I had, a girlfriend, but I didn't have dependents. And so, like, how can I outwork? And so I think one of the beautiful things, we have more entrepreneurs today than we've ever had in human history. And there's so much opportunity out there. But then there's also this element of like finding a passion, because that really, when you're passionate about something, like, it can extend. You can do it for a long period of time. And I do like this idea of doing something on the side while you're making money, right? And especially when you don't have if you don't have, people that rely on you, like kids or anything, if you're like that 25, I went out and got my personal training certificate. So I was waking up at like 4:30 a.m. training people, and then going to work, and then I would come back and I would train more people. And so that has evolved, because I got into real estate, and then I still invest a little bit in some real estate, but mainly Dr. Les and I have partnered up, and we own a clinic together here in Tampa. And so we have the Health Decoded podcast, but we also have a clinic that we're trying to grow for human performance, human optimization, and then also we do chiropractic and decompression therapy. So my story has led me in so many different directions, right? And so we go back to a little bit of the point of presence. What can I capture today? What can I learn or grow from today? And there's so much opportunity on YouTube and various ways you can learn and get mentored online, and utilizing social for good. But I would dig into something like you're passionate about, right? If you aren't passionate about maybe that 9 to 5, like right now, how can you find something that you are passionate about? Maybe there's a certification, maybe there's something that you can gain more knowledge on, and then potentially you can make money on, right? And so that's what I did with personal training, that has kind of like catered to my experience now of evolving and really understanding the body at a much higher level. And now growing a practice with a really good friend of mine. So, but you're in control of your story, right? That's the first thing. Like at 25, I realized that, like, I got to make a switch. And so you're in control of your story. And what do you want your story to look like? And I'm 39 now. What do you want your story to look like in the next 5, 10, 15 years, right? And so if you're in control of your story, what can I do tomorrow just to learn a little bit more information? And then just like going to the gym, just like learning new information, everything compounds, right? And so the more you do it, you just get a little bit better from it, right? The more you do it. And so if I encourage somebody, read Atomic Habits by James Clear. It really puts the neuroscience element as well as just the habit formation of how things compound. Because if you can learn a little bit about something each and every day, you'll get a little bit better at it. And you don't even realize how much damage you can do in 5 years and a year too.
And I love what you mentioned earlier. I'm gonna echo it again. The key word, man, discipline. Because discipline is everything. You also mentioned, I remember you mentioned that faith is important to you. When you look at how faith can impact your outlook on life, looking through the lens of a spiritual side, how has that helped you have clarity on what you will and will not do, and how does that impact you professionally?
Yeah, that's everything to me. So that's beyond even professional. We even put. So I read this book called Traction, and that traction hit me on a personal level and a business level. But we have a mission, a vision statement, and core values for our family. So when you walk in, you know of our Tack family values, and so me being like, I love this idea of like there is something bigger than myself, right? Not everyone's going to remember Matt Tack in 10, 15, 100 years, maybe hopefully because I impacted somebody that much, but you want to invest in other people. And so that's one of the big things for me as far as the investment that I'm making into my kids and my lineage and then other people outside is that really I realize that this world is a way bigger than myself. And so my faith, it keeps me grounded. I wake up and I have a choice, right? I tell my kids this: you have two choices today, and actions and attitude are everything. You have two choices. You have a choice over your actions, and then you have a choice over your attitude. You don't have a choice when things come at you and you get hit and somebody dies in your family or you had a business deal go awry. And trust me, I had plenty of these this past year, plenty of real estate deals that went flat and I lost a lot of money. But the reality is like, what are my actions and my attitude that go beyond that? And so there was this guy, Aubrey Huff, that really explained this well. Is that when you're up to bat, he had plenty of strikeouts, but his best days is if he kept swinging, just like you were saying with Babe Ruth, is that he's got to shorten up the gap between strikeouts to be a better hitter, right? But the reality is a strikeout will come, but it's the mentality of you getting up to the plate that very next time and changing the attitudes that I'm going to crush this ball out of the park regardless, or maybe I'm just going to hit a blooper to left field to get me going, to get some momentum and rhythm. So that's one of the big things for me in my faith. It just keeps me like completely grounded. And when I have a strikeout, hey, I want to minimize that gap as much as possible so I can get back to a single or a double or a triple, and then I can get back to those home runs. So faith is just such a critical appointment. It's so important to me in terms of the evolution of who Matt Tack is.
Once again, listen to Refocused Radio and watching us online, talking to Matthew Tack, and go to the website with him and his colleague, Dr. Alfred Alessi, AlessiFunctionalHealth.com. Make sure you show them support in Florida and also support the show that they do, Health Decoded Podcast. In the last 4 minutes we have, let's talk about community as we wrap this up. Obviously, you've been on different media platforms and telling your story and talking about your business and all that jazz. But when you look at the sense of community and how you leave your legacy, right? It's not just your story, but it's also something that will inspire people. What's the thing that you hope, as people keep learning about your story and what you're doing professionally, that they will be able to appreciate from your stories?
Yeah, it goes back to just like this one basic element that I kind of like put as a precursor early, is that better days are always ahead of you, regardless of today. Better days are always ahead, and that this world is a really beautiful place to experience and to learn a little bit more about. So maintaining a sense of curiosity is really, I think, one of the most important things. Like Ed Milet talks about this, like, if you're not growing, you're dying. And so there's this element of curiosity out of my story I hope that people resonate with, is that, yeah, you like depression and mental health is just such just an awful thing nowadays. But the reality is that so many people at their depths, they're such the back end of things that they feel like they never can get out of it. But there's so much truth into it, just that discipline of the compounding effect of maintaining a sense of curiosity, of hope, that better days can come, right? And the clouds will clear, and some days it will dump rain on you, but those days, can you dance in the rain, right? Are you able to just get out there and dance in the rain and see the beauty in it all? And so that's one of the biggest delivering points of like why I share my story, is because I was down in the dumps. And don't get me wrong, there's days like that happen, but majority of the days I still try to dance in the rain.
It's like we said earlier on the show about training. It's not that I love training, it's the product of what happens when I train. That discipline factor is always the game changer. So I appreciate that wisdom and all the other amazing points you made on the show. I appreciate you being on here. And like always, Matthew Tack, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, man. It was a great show.